The Great War, also known as World War I, was a global conflict that lasted from 1914 to 1918. It was one of the deadliest wars in human history, with an estimate 9 million military personnel and 7 million civilian deaths. The war was fought between the Allied powers, which included France, the United Kingdom, and the United States, among others, and the Central Powers, which included Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire, among others. The causes of the Great War are complex and varied, but some of the main factors that contributed to the conflict include militarism, alliances, imperialism, and nationalism. In the decades leading up to the war, European powers had formed complex alliances with one another, and tensions between these powers had been rising. One of the key events that sparked the war was the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary in 1914. Ferdinand was the heir to the Austro-Hungarian throne, and his assassination was carried out by a group of Serbian nationalists who opposed Austria-Hungary's rule over Bosnia. In the aftermath of Ferdinand's assassination, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia, and the conflict quickly escalated as other powers became drawn into the fight. Germany, an ally of Austria-Hungary, declared war on Russia, which was allied with Serbia. France, an ally of Russia, declared war on Germany. The war saw the use of new technologies, such as poison gas and tanks, as well as the introduction of total war tactics, in which entire societies were mobilized for the war effort. The war also had a significant impact on the political landscape of Europe, leading to the collapse of empires and the redrawing of national borders. The United States initially remained neutral in the conflict, but eventually entered the war in 1917 after Germany resumed unrestricted submarine warfare and attempted to broker a secret peace deal with Mexico. The entry of the United States, with its vast resources and industrial capabilities, was a turning point in the war and helped tip the balance in favor of the Allied powers. The end of the war came with the signing of the Treaty of Versailles in 1919, which officially ended the conflict and imposed harsh penalties on Germany. The treaty is widely seen as having contributed to the tensions that would eventually lead to World War II. If you enjoy these kinds of videos, make sure to subscribe to History Says. And while you are at it, make sure to hit that bell icon to not miss any videos. Let's continue. The Great War had a profound and lasting impact on the world, and its legacy can still be seen today in the political and cultural landscape of Europe and beyond. It was a conflict that changed the course of history and shaped the world we live in today. The aftermath of the Great War was marked by political and social upheaval, as the old order in Europe was dismantled and new nations emerged from the ashes of the conflict. The collapse of the German, Austro-Hungarian, and Ottoman empires resulted in the creation of new states, such as Czechoslovakia and Yugoslavia. The Treaty of Versailles, which officially ended the war, imposed heavy reparations on Germany and stripped the country of its overseas colonies and military capabilities. The treaty was seen as excessively punitive by many Germans, and it contributed to the rise of resentment and nationalism in the country. In the years following the war, the world experienced a series of events that would shape the course of the 20th century. The Russian Revolution of 1917 resulted in the establishment of the Soviet Union and the rise of communism in Europe. The 1920s and 1930s saw the rise of authoritarian regimes in Europe, such as Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy. The impact of the Great War was felt around the globe, as the conflict had drawn in powers from all corners of the world. The war had a significant impact on the political and cultural landscape of the Middle East, as the collapse of the Ottoman Empire led to the creation of new states and the emergence of the modern Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The Great War was a turning point in history, and its legacy is still felt today. It was a conflict that shaped the world we live in and had a lasting impact on the course of human events. The human cost of the Great War was staggering, as millions of people lost their lives in the conflict. The war saw the use of new technologies, such as poison gas and tanks, which led to unprecedented levels of destruction and loss of life. Many soldiers died in brutal trench warfare, and civilians were caught in the crossfire as the conflict spread to cities and towns across Europe and beyond. The war also had a significant impact on the economies of the participating countries, as resources were redirected to support the war effort. Inflation soared, and food shortages were common, as agriculture was disrupted and transportation networks were damaged. The social impact of the war was also significant, as the conflict disrupted the traditional roles of men and women. Women took on new roles in the workforce, as many men were away at war, and the war also saw the emergence of the women's suffrage movement. In the aftermath of the war, there was a sense of disillusionment and despair, as people struggled to come to terms with the loss and devastation that the conflict had caused. Many people questioned the wisdom of the war, and there was a sense of despair at the loss of life and the destruction that had been inflicted on the world. Despite the hardships and suffering that the Great War brought, it also had some positive outcomes. The conflict led to the emergence of new states and the redrawing of national borders, and it also contributed to the development of new technologies and ideas. The war also brought about significant social and political changes, such as the rise of the women's suffrage movement and the emergence of new forms of government. The Great War was a defining moment in history, and its legacy is still felt today. It was a conflict that changed the course of human events and shaped the world we live in.